Marcus Dawe is the CEO of Mineral Carbonation Inc. Focuses his activities on developing and supporting ventures that provide a global innovation edge. Marcus is based in Canberra, Australia. And so we want to thank you for staying up late into the night there, Marcus, to join us. And the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Peter, as well, and Paul. Yeah, it's 3:40 in the morning in Canberra. I come with a message of hope. Canberra's a city of 500,000 people, and we've been COVID-free, not one single instance of COVID for 6 weeks. So it can happen, and that's without lockdown. That's actually just with social participation and community. And that's a hallmark of what our city, Canberra, has as a global village. So today, I really wanted to give you an update on a climate technology and an emissions technology that we've been developing in Australia. And I want to start with a bit of a story of my finding myself having exited my last company back 14 years ago, and finding myself with a fair bit of time to look at what I wanted to put my time to next. And that was really around the time that inconvenient truth hit the global awareness, and everyone started really thinking about climate. Obviously, many of us have been thinking about it for a long time. So what I wanted to do was take my solution focus, my solution approach to technology in battling climate change. And so I gathered some colleagues up, and we started to look at what would a solution for carbon reduction, abatement, removal look like. So rather than starting with a technology and saying, well, we've got a technology, we need to make it work, we actually turned it into a question of if there were a technology that could help us on scale, what would it look like? What would the hallmarks look like? You know, it'd have to be sustainable, obviously. It'd have to play into, you know, some kind of circularity. It'd have to do many of the things that the speakers today have been talking about. So, you know, just imagine, what would that technology be? And so we then took 6 years to really do the research, and we found a technology called mineral carbonation, which is the Earth's own process of weathering. It's how we reduce the emissions from the atmosphere already, the Earth does, over millions of years. It absorbs CO2 into rock effectively. So mineral carbonation is the carbonation of minerals in surface rocks, typically. And so we embarked on that, and it took us 6 years to then present that to our government, who wanted to peer review it, and we won funding. And so I'm talking to you after 7 years of having been fully funded by the Australian governments, both state and federal, and also industry. And so what we did was we got a collaboration together of a very committed team. There's over 20 of us that have been working for 7 years on this technology. And behind me, you see the result, which is a global reference pilot plant. And this is significant because there's nothing of this scale that has ever been done previously. There'd been work done by the US Department of Energy, and we picked that, when we started, we picked actually their research up and then moved it forward. But what happened around that time was that a lot of the industries, particularly around fossil fuel industries, had chosen geosequestration and CCS, which we know has got a fair bit of momentum, has had a fair bit of investment and needs more around storage. But what we determined was we wanted to transform the CO2 and use it actually as a resource. And this is a significant change in mindset. When you suddenly have CO2 that's available as a resource, it has properties, it has energy, it has actually some properties that are very good. And we react those with minerals, we react them with available wastes from industry. And so what we have now is a technology that what's called TRL, the technology readiness of our technology, is at level 6, which means pilot moving to demonstration. So significantly, what our technology and what we're doing right now is we're out of the R&D, which we conducted in secret, which is um, a significant approach. And we determined that unless we had actually accumulated enough intellectual property around the technology, it would be very hard to commercialize. And this is the uncomfortable truth about technology. We love technology being developed out of universities, but the reality is, to get investment, you have to have some kind of ability to get that to market, get it adopted, and give some competitive advantage to the early adopters, the early movers, which we're now doing, and that's pretty significant. So we have published some patents and things like that, but significantly, we've taken our technology through 3 levels in 7 years of development and ramping up the scale. We're on quite a good trajectory to where today we've been approached by, in 12 months, we've been approached by about 30 companies globally who need to find solutions like ours for them. So, what does a mineral carbonation plant look like? Well, what we can do is we can slot our technology into, say, an emission into industry that's looking to decarbonize, like steel, like cement, like chemical manufacture, but also energy. And so the world's doing a great job, and we need to accelerate it further in getting renewables into the grid and replacing electricity. But significantly, heavy industry is finding it very hard to decarbonize. And so we've actually focused on that primarily. We haven't been looking at, taking emissions from coal-fired power stations or anything like that, as much as Australia is quite responsible for coal emissions as a major exporter. We've actually taken the responsibility that we need to be helping all the other industries decarbonize. And that's really come into its fore now. So we've been engaging with cement manufacturers. We produce a low emissions carbon brick, and in fact, negative carbon emission cement that can be put into concrete, for example. And that's one of the major applications we're doing. We're also doing plasterboards, drywall. We're doing industrial products. So we're turning the CO2 from a gas into a solid, and then using those materials into industrial processes, into markets. And so significantly, what we've done this year is we have breakthrough techno-economics where we don't need a carbon price now. So we're going very quickly towards projects, and we've got a pipeline of fantastic projects around the world. The first one's being in Australia. We're doing things like looking at taking mine tailings from miners, reducing their liability on their mine waste, for example, remediating that without any new hazards, and actually storing away and locking away any hazardous material, but in the same time producing materials and getting rid of their scope 2 emissions. And so significantly, we've now got, as I say, breakthrough economics. The techno-economics we're producing through our plant behind us is giving rise to the validation of pathways which are economic. And so we're now talking about, really making a disruption, because when you have economics leading the way, industries are changing and they're adopting. And so we're very, very excited. Now, to play into the ESG funding models, what we're doing is, by creating these pathways, typically we're creating materials, magnesium carbonates and silicates and calcium carbonates that are negative emissions products. So they can substitute into existing products that people are developing and industries are developing that have a low emissions profile. So we're actually giving them a reduction in those as well, apart from also embodying the carbon. So this is really significant, because we're getting a multiplying factor on the products we're producing. So very, very excited on that. Now, the ESG investment piece is where we're talking to a lot of groups around investment in the vehicles that would be building our plants. And we're talking scale of 100,000 tonnes to 2 million tonnes per annum in any location. Now, they can be invested in by ESG under a special purpose vehicle. We develop these. Now, the customer, the steel plant, the cement plant, even the miner, doesn't have to pay for those. We're producing a return, and the returns that we're showing are quite good, quite long term. Now, our technology over the longer term can be kept going. Like once we've got our emissions down, where's your CO2 coming from? We can use it with direct air capture and actually draw down and use our technology as a negative emissions technology. So we've got a validation of a pathway that immediately gets paid for by materials, and then over the longer term, a carbon price and the imperative to remove emissions, then we play into that. So significantly, we think we've got a very good platform to help us decarbonize as a globe, and use the will of the people through their pension funds and through their investments, family trusts, and impact investment groups, that they can invest in these things and actually get returns, and green bonds and other mechanisms which are emerging. But you've got to have the technology at the readiness level. And I recall Bill Gates talking to The Atlantic 2 years ago saying, it takes 20 years to develop a technology. We can't just expect the technologies to be here. And even with the most amount of money, you have to go through your stages of technology development. And that's what we're doing. And that's what we've done for 14 years. If it's 20 years, we've still got 6 to go. And in fact, our large scale plants, we expect to be online within 6 years. And in fact, within 4 years, we've got 4 major projects that we're validating now. Now, we've been funded by the governments, as I say, but we're about to go out to significant capital raise early next year. And we're talking pretty much to impact investment groups on that. But again, that's into MCI, so we can actually expand into to really validate all those other projects that we need to around the world. In Europe, particularly, are coming fast, and North America as well. We've got a lot of interest, as well as obviously Australia. So we welcome talking to impact investment groups and the investment groups that are values aligned to us. Where we don't partake in greenwashing or anything like that. We want to validate, true projects that are, have significant ability to reduce emissions. And so we're very, very excited by where we're at. Our team is, a fantastic team. We're chemical engineers, we're geologists. I'm a data scientist. But significantly, I'm a steward for this technology, and my team are. We presented this at Davos this year as well, and we've got a lot of interest from kind of the big end of town, which is significant because that's really where we need to make the impact. But I'm very proud of my team. Our plant behind me is in Newcastle, just north of Sydney. And we've got a team up there that is very dedicated. We're running this plant 8 hours a day. It's running flat out, producing building materials every day, and producing the materials, validating feedstocks from our customers, and then doing the techno-economics. And it's pretty significant, undertaking. And as I say, 14 years of work, and it's been a pleasure being part of the solution. We're all overwhelmed by the problem. But really, it's up to us as those with the solutions to make it happen. And so I just wanted to leave it there and open to some questions. Sorry, Paul, you're on mute.
I've forgotten it. I was so involved in your presentation that I forgot to unmute myself. So
thanks.
Anyway, this question came in before you started speaking, so it kind of it's an interesting juxtaposition here. This question says, I think that without removing the emissions that are already stuck in the atmosphere, we can't make much progress. Organizations, policymakers, and investors must include infrastructure and support for tech solutions that are designed to clean up the existing greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. What's your take on this, Marcus?
Absolutely. No. So the real issue here is that we're going to have to decarbonize as fast as we're carbonizing. That's the well accepted paradigm, and that's why I say with ours, we need to scale. So we need a pathway to scale. Ours is to get ESG investment, to get customers wanting to reduce their emissions, their own emissions on their own targets. Microsoft and all those companies have all made pledges, but how are we going to do it? And they're all kind of looking for projects. So and then over the medium term, there will be a bigger carbon price, maybe a world carbon price, which will then encourage more trajectory, more scaling. But in the longer term, as I say, we need to draw down negative emissions, direct air capture. So direct air capture, obviously we need forests, we need all the bio solutions as well. But that's really the answer, is that we could keep our plants running. We have a goal of getting 1 billion tonnes out of industry by 2035. That's our target. And that means us running about 200 plants around the world, and then keeping those plants running that we can scale, that are just storing away CO2. Yes, we're going to use some beneficially, but we can actually store it away. Ours is a carbon sink technology. It's permanent. Nothing is released from the materials we're producing. They are end state, and they're very easy to validate in terms of a carbon accounting sense. So getting credits and stuff like that is very easy.
Great. Okay, so this is a comment from one of our listeners, Marcus. You seem far more advanced than the Carbon X Prize companies. I'm not familiar with the Carbon X Prize.
Yeah. We apply. I love, and back then when Carbon X started, it was great. Here's a starting gun. Let's get all the startups. We had already our funding locked in. We had 7 years of funding already guaranteed. It was a distraction for us to go to Carbon X. It's it is an encouragement, it's an opportunity, but we're already on our own path. I'd already done 6 years of getting funding by the time Carbon X came around. And look, it's great that those companies have got some funding, but we're well beyond that, absolutely. And the secret was to be able to do it in commercial and research secrecy, so that we could accumulate enough intellectual property to go through the stages, not be distracted.
Okay, so here's another question. What are your key considerations when exploring different financing options? And in parentheses, debt versus equity, aligned venture capital, leadership, etc.
It's all about values. I mean, we've got a lot of access to capital, and we're having discussions, and welcome all discussions from groups that have an ESG or impact, climate focus. And we welcome those discussions, but it really is about values alignment, and we're looking at projects all around the world. So matching the funds, those funds objectives to particular projects is important. Some may not want to invest in decarbonising or making sustainable nickel, for example, which is one pathway we could do for Elon Musk. We can reduce, kind of the footprint of nickel mining. That's one of the but some of the ESG funds may not want to invest in that. They want to invest more into decarbonising steel from India, for example, which is quite possible.
Okay. Here's another question about financing. What financial mechanisms have you found most suitable for longer term, in parentheses, high R&D startups? And what can the financial sector do better to make capital available for ventures like mineral carbonation?
Yep. So look, there's gaps in funding, and the biggest gap was kind of getting to the stage we're at. It's the deadly divide, the classic technology development gap. So pension funds and ESG investments have to not just invest in projects; they actually have to put some capital aside to invest in early stage. So this is a real opportunity, and don't put all your money there. It's risky, but we need to invest in that risk, and we need to get a whole lot of technology. Ours is not the only technology. We're one of a portfolio of technologies that need to emerge and need to be have stewardship, have funding pathways, and if they work, they need to and they look like they're going to be viable. They need to be funded. They need to have good long-term committed patient funders, not just quick return, kind of flipping investment kind of mentality, which the previous speakers have all talked about. Having sustainable funding is important.
Okay, Marcus, any closing comments from where are we? Almost 4 a.m. in Canada.
Yep, it is. It's 4 a.m. and the sun's about to rise soon. No, look, thank you very much, Peter and Paul, for having me in this first one for me. It's been a great summit, and I really appreciate being able to present to your viewers, and hope that you all come out of, kind of the COVID and, the ordeal that the world's going at the moment, which, we're all very sympathetic towards.